This is a brief tutorial of the game Res Arcana, as played on Board Game Arena. Res Arcana is a small engine builder where you have a set of 8 cards in your deck plus a mage, and you are in a race with other players to get to 10 points. And you only have access to those 8 cards, but you have some other things that you can buy later and add to that point total. And as soon as a round is over and somebody has 10 points, the game ends and whoever has the most points wins. So the game starts by showing you all 8 cards. There will be 3 cards in your hand, 5 cards that are in your deck, which will be then shuffled and drawn and randomly, and then you get to pick one of these 2 mages. Now in this case, these cards were dealt all randomly. There is a variant where you can draft those cards to try to build those combos as you go, but in this case it is random. But you do see all of them up front. There are 5 different resource types. Some they have different names, but we'll just go by colors. The only one that's really different is this gold one. Gold is worth much more than the others, and oftentimes when you would receive a resource of your choice, you don't get to pick gold on that. So gold are valuable. They can basically buy points that get you towards that 10. Now, each round of the game has 3 main phases. The first is the collection phase, where any income that you have out in your tableau will be collected. Then the second is the action phase, where you go through and continue to take actions in round about the players until everybody passes. And then the third part is checking for endgame and doing some cleanup to prepare for the next round. So the collection part of the game, while you all start with one of each type of resource, many of these collections will let you get resource. So whenever you see this little hand symbol on a card, that means during the income phase, during that first collection phase, you get whatever is in that symbol, or next to that symbol. So in this case, you'd get a green. Here you would get a blue. This one you would get a blue, a green, and a red. Here you would get 2 reds. And whenever you see the symbol of the pentagon that is gray, that means you can get any resource, though again, like I mentioned before, in this case in parentheses it says any resource that is not gold. Now this is a special card to where you only get to do that, take those 2 resources, if you've put gold on this card. So in that income phase, you will collect anything that has one of those hands in it. Some of these cards as well will give you those, and you get one each of these per round. You can also, during that income phase, collect any resources that are on top of a card. For instance, this vault lets you put gold on a card during the action phase. And during that income phase, if you want to, you can take all of the gold from that card. You can't just take partial whenever that's a case. You have to take everything that's on the card. Some of these big places of power will also have stuff on the card, and those you can take everything that's on top of that card during that income phase, if you would like. Once everybody's done their income phase, then is the action phase. And there are several different types of actions that you can take. The first action is playing a card in front of you. So these are the cards that would be in my hand. These are going to be, again, in my deck, but there'll be a space where I have those in front of me. And to play a card, you have to pay its cost. So in this case, this one costs 1 gold. This one costs 2 red, 1 green, 1 blue. This one costs 1 gold and then 1 of anything. And that can be an action, is playing the card in front of you. The next most common action is the use of a card. And so this is basically whenever you see this tap symbol and then an arrow next to it, that means you get to use that card for its ability. And you tap it to the side, you turn the card, In BGA, it just kind of shows as used. And you get whatever is on the other side of that arrow. So in this case, if I tap it, I can put a gold piece on this card. That's what that means. For instance, whereas this one, I can tap it and pay 1 red, so there's an extra requirement for it, and then I can untap any other card that lets me then reuse it. This one here, I can tap it and gain red equal to the black of another rival. So if somebody has 5 black resources, I can tap this and gain 5 red resources, so on and so forth. Each card is different, has different abilities. There are some actions that you take that don't require tapping, but they are still actions. The only one I see here is you can, as an action, destroy this card and discard another card to gain that card's resources cost as resources. Except you don't get gold through that. So that is another action that you can take. You can also claim one of these down here. These are extra things that you can get. There are both monuments, which all cost 4 gold, and they get you points. These seals with numbers on them, those are all points. And so you can always buy these for 4 gold, and they'll give you some sort of points, and usually will give you a benefit like this. Again, you can tap it to draw a card. Or you can get a place of power. These are very powerful, and they're good ways to get points towards that 10 points in the end of the game, but they are very expensive, as you can see. This one costs 9 black. This one costs 3 of 4 different colors. But each of them have actions that they can either take. So this one has a constant, for instance, any dragon types you can place at 3 discount, or you can tap it to get 2 gold, or you can tap it and tap a dragon to put 2 gold on this card, and you'll notice that you get points, 1 point for every gold that's on this card. So if you can load it up with gold and not take any of it during the income phase, then that can really add up to your points at the end of the game. So these are different things that you can claim by paying their cost as one of your actions as well. And then the final thing you can do is discard a card from your hand. They're called artifacts. You'll see that sometimes, but whenever you see artifact, that's just basically these cards. You can discard a card and gain 1 gold. Now remember, you have that deck of 8 cards only. When you discard a card, chances are you're going to draw it back up again. Now you only draw 1 card per round. After you pass, you'll draw 1 card, but there are some other ways to draw extra cards in order to cycle through those, and that may be a good option for you. The other kind of special action that will be taken sometimes is when you attack with a dragon, and that's again just using the dragon card. And whenever you do that, then all rivals have to either get rid of 2 of their green resources, or there'll be some sort of way that they can handle the attack. In this case, they can discard a card in order to ignore that. There are ways to ignore that. For example, this card here lets you react to those attacks by just giving a blue instead of having to give 2 green. There is this protection magic item that lets you just tap it to ignore an attack. So there are some ways to deal with that, but all of the dragons have some sort of attack power that if the other users can't pay with their life, then they have to pay extra resources using to make up for the greens that they can't pay. If you don't have the green to pay, and you don't want to do the other action that exists on whatever the attack is, then you have to pay 2 of other resources for every one that you're missing, and that could include gold. So if I only had 1 green but I had 3 red, then I would pay 2 red instead of the 1 green. Other than that, it's really just each of these cards have lots of different abilities, and BGA does a good job of explaining as you hover over them what they do. So this one gives you, during the collect phase, any 2 resources if there's still gold on that card, and then if you want to tap it, you get to put more gold on it. But eventually you may want to take all that gold out. You don't get that benefit, but you get the gold, and that can be valuable. This one here, we talked about, you can tap it and pay a green to put 3 black on this one, which I can then pull off at a different time, or I can discard it to gain the cost in resources from another card, and so on and so forth. Now each round you are going to pick one of these magic items, and so in turn order at the beginning, or actually backwards turn order, you will each pick one of these magic items, and then anytime you pass, you will put that magic item back and then choose another one that's available. So if you're the first one to pass, you have less options to choose, but if you're the first one to pass, you get the first player token, which actually is a point. So when we're checking points at the end of the round, that's worth a point as well. But there will be less to choose from because people will have those options too. These magic items can give you resources during the collect phase. This one lets you turn other resources into gold. This one lets you cycle some cards. This one lets you ignore an attack. This one lets you untap something that you've tapped already. This one lets you draw a card, and this one lets you turn any 3 resources into 3 other types of resources, excluding gold. And again, you will choose one of these seers in order to have that. It's basically your starting ability. Like this one here gives me a green during collect and lets me tap it to untap any beast type. And I have 1 beast type here, but if I had a bunch, then that might be something to keep. I think I ended up keeping this one, which lets me control what comes up next in my draw pile. So everybody selects their cards. You have the 3 in your hand. You have your mage out. This is the draw pile. Again, you can at any time look at your draw pile, though this is not the order that it's going to come up in. It's just you can always see what cards you have. So if you're trying to figure out those right combos, then you can do that. This shows how many of each essence that you have. I have the first player token, and here are all of the magic items. Because this green player is last to go, they're going to pick the first magic item. And I can see what other people have as their mages and in front of them. So that is the game. You continue after you do the collection item. So in this case, I chose this magic item, which lets me collect one of these, either a blue or a red during collect. And so I gain a red, and then I got a blue from this card. And then it's my turn to do an action or pass. I decide to play this elemental spring. I want to get that income going quickly, and we can continue to go back around and around until everybody passes. Then the end game is checked to see if anybody has 10. If not, all of the cards are flipped back up so that they can be used for the next round, and you do the collect phase again. And you continue to do that until somebody hits that 10 mark, and then at the end of that round, whoever has the most points is the winner. All right, let's skip a bit ahead so you can see what an end game situation looks like. Okay, this is right towards the end of the game. Most of my cards have been played out. I have 1 here in my deck that I never used or I discarded, and then this one here that's still in my hand. I played out most of these, and you can see which ones have been used. I've got a monument, and I have 2 places of power. This one I've used, and I've got 4 gold that is stored on it, which is contributing to my point total there. And this one just gives me 3 power as well, or 3 points as well. So I was in a fairly good position in here, and I had a bit of a trick up my sleeve where this specific place of power, these are random, they have different sides to them, but this one specifically lets you tap it to just check a victory right away instead of waiting to the end of the round. So if you, especially in a close game, if you happen to get right to that 10 points before someone else, you can immediately check the points and check for a victory. And if you have the most points, immediately win. That's what I end up doing. But you can see the other players have their cards going as well. It is really just a race game trying to get that combination of 10 points. Most of mine came from these places of power. I'd get some from the Oracle too, but that's 9 right there. And then 1 right here, that's 10, and 1 here for this dragon, that's 11. And I needed 10, so after green player makes their move, instead of doing something else that I could, I just go ahead and check it. And that immediately ends the game, and points are tallied up. Typically it would happen at the end of the round. This is a bit of an exception, but with 10 points, or with 11 points, I was able to win the game. And that is how Res Arcana works. Again, you're just going through these rounds of collecting resources, using cards and paying for them, using their actions to build up an engine, and then getting that race to 10 points to get from these places of power typically, or the monument cards. All right, hope this was helpful.